Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green 19 podcast. I'm Dominique Yates. I'm joined by Ryan Wood. Spoon is out for this week's show, so we have a blast from the past.
Hello.
Olivia Reiner.
Nice to
doing?
see you.
Good.
Great. Thank
Welcome
you for having me.
My worlds are colliding right now. This
right.
is crazy cool. Nice
Yeah.
to see you, Olivia.
It's always a pleasure, truly.
Olivia, we have something in common. We both know what it's like to be annoyed by this guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a distinct pleasure.
it is. So we're in our own little fraternity. So it's
Yes.
good to have you.
It's an elite. I should say it's an exclusive club, but it probably isn't an exclusive club.
That's right. Well, welcome. Obviously covers the Eagles now for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Came through the rains working here. So what's it like just being back in Green Bay?
It's crazy. This is my first time back. I haven't been back in 3 years. Everything is the same. Not a thing has changed other than obviously there's some new faces here in the media corps. A lot of new faces on the team. That is the biggest difference, is that this is pretty much an entirely different team than the teams that I covered when I was here just a few years ago.
Well, because when you were covering the Packers, it was the end of an era.
Oh, yeah.
You really, kind of covered the closing of a chapter. And since then, Ryan Gutekunst has completely overhauled this roster. It is the youngest team in the NFL for the second year running. So, yeah, there wouldn't be a lot of familiar faces in that locker room anymore.
Oh, see, I thought new era. I thought you were talking about me being here. Like that new era.
You're not that important, Dominic.
I was about to say, Aaron Rodgers leaves, Dominique Yates comes in. I thought that's what you were referring to, but it's all right.
No, it's good.
I'm sure the office still looks the same. I'm not much of a decorator, so I'm sure it looks the same as when you left 3 years ago.
It might be even a little messier somehow, if that's possible.
It's a lot of boy here. Yeah, a lot of messy boy.
We've dominated. So after you and then Cassidy came in, cleaned it up a little bit, and then I came here and it all just went just down below. So
it's good though. It's got a lot of charm.
And as Olivia will tell you, it's hard to rein me in. So
that's right.
Yeah.
But anyways, again, thank you for stopping in and being a guest. And it kind of works out too because we're talking about the wild card game that comes down Sunday in Philadelphia. So we'll be able to get a little bit of Packers plus Eagles talk. So it's good to get both perspectives. And we'll start, Ryan, and just kind of take it from the Packers. So you were here last year. You remembered what it's like, even though the records are different from this year to last year. Just what can you sense from the vibe and just the mood in the locker room? Does it feel similar? Does it feel different? Just what's been the feeling like heading into Sunday?
I wish for the life of me that I can remember what it felt like going into that Dallas game for the wild card last year. I don't remember what the vibe was like then. I do remember that when the Packers completely jumped on the Cowboys, no one saw that coming. I mean, I turned to Pete Doherty in the press box in Dallas and was like, what is this? Like, what is going on right now? So it's not like, look, they won their last 3 regular season games last year. They rode some momentum, and they were the thing that team had going for them is that the playoffs started early. They had to win to get in. They were in survival mode for most of December, especially late December, in a way that this team hasn't been. I mean, they've lost their last 2, and it's kind of, at the end of the day, it means they have to go to Philadelphia instead of maybe having the 6th seed, but they knew that they were in. They knew that this week was coming no matter what. So it wasn't the urgency that last year's team had. With that said, it would be completely revisionist for anyone to say, they saw that blowout in Dallas coming. It was not in the cards, and then they showed up to the stadium, and they stomped them. I mean, they just put it on the Cowboys. So it's a good reminder that you really never know what's going to happen this time of year. Now, in the big picture, and I wrote about this week, not since 2009 has a team made the Super Bowl after losing their last 2 regular season games. And that year, 2009, actually both teams did, the Indianapolis Colts and the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints, who would go on to win that Super Bowl, lost their last 3. So for the Packers to do what they hoped to do, what they wanted to do when the season began, which is make a Super Bowl run, they'll have to do what teams simply do not do. They'll have to completely abruptly turn around this late season letdown, losing their last 2 games. But you can't say it can't be done. Look, I didn't see that Cowboys blowout coming last year, and I don't see a Packers win coming this week, but that's why you got to play the game.
Yeah. As far as from the Eagles' perspective, looking at last year, similarly going from 10-1 to a collapse to right now, they're as hot as any team in the NFL. What's the feeling from the Eagles' perspective getting ready for Sunday?
Yeah, I think this is a team in a completely different place from a confidence standpoint right now than they were this time last year, going down to Tampa to play that wild card game and completely collapsing in that game. You were almost just waiting for the other shoe to drop going into that game because of how poorly they ended the season last year. As you mentioned, just completely falling out after going 10-1 to start the season. But even at the time that they were 10-1, did not feel like a 10-1 team. There were definitely some close wins, some wins that felt like losses in a lot of ways. But now there has been so much change on this Eagles team, and so much momentum going into this playoffs where this is just a completely different team, a much more confident team, having won so many games coming out of the bye week. They just lost to the Commanders a few weeks ago, just when Jalen Hurts went down with his concussion, and they still managed to defeat the Dallas Cowboys the following week. They beat the New York Giants in the regular season finale, even with Tanner McKee, the third-string quarterback, starting. So they have won in multiple ways. They have had injuries throughout the season, and whoever has been the next man up has responded well. That being said, this is a really healthy team going into this game. So really, you couldn't really plan things better for this Eagles team at this point, other than, Jalen Hurts hasn't played in a few weeks after he is as he is progressing through concussion protocol now. So we'll see if he is available. I anticipate him to be available for Sunday's game, but he still needs to get cleared.
I think, when you hear, the Eagles just beat the Giants with a third-string quarterback, it's easy to be like, well, who cares, because the Giants, right?
Sure.
But the Packers just lost to the Bears with a backup quarterback, but still, the worst team that that the Packers have lost to, I think, since December 2nd, 2018, the day that the Packers lost to a 3-13 Arizona Cardinals team at home, and then fired Mike McCarthy later that night. So it's been 6 years since. Just because you play a bad team doesn't mean that a win is automatic. It's still impressive. What I'm curious about from your perspective, Olivia, when did you know, this team's gone 14-3 now. It's been a very emphatic turnaround from the slump that they ended last season on. When did you know following this season that, okay, they're over that? They've left that slump in the past, and this is a new and improved Eagles squad.
Yeah, since the bye week, I think things have changed immensely. In the beginning of the season, I think we all had this maybe sinking feeling that perhaps there could be some lingering issues from last season, just because season starts 2-2, the defense is still in a little bit of a shaky place. Jalen Hurts is turning the ball over a lot. There were just some issues that needed to be ironed out before the bye week, and it feels like that was the real inflection point, that the changes that they made, both in terms of how they were going to operate, reinforcing some of the fundamentals on defense, but also making some personnel changes as well. The Eagles' defense has really come a long way since that Week 1 game when the Packers faced them, and one of the big reasons why is because of the emergence of Cooper DeJean as their slot cornerback. He's been not only fabulous in coverage, but he's also been a big reason why they've been so stingy against the run this season too. And, he's a rookie cornerback coming in and operating at a high level like that. So the personnel changes, there's been a lot of different factors, but I think they have been able to put the past in the past since the bye week and prove that they are a better team with two brand new coordinators that have fit in really well with these players and have been able to get the most out of them.
What's really unique, thinking back to that Week 1 game in Brazil, you can say the Eagles have gotten better since that game. I don't know if you can say that for the Packers. What's looked different about that group, you can say, over this last 3-4 months?
I think, conversely to when did the Eagles put last season behind them, I think when the Packers failed most significantly to build on last season was really when they went to Detroit and they couldn't win that game on the road against a very, very good Lions team. The reason I say that is you had a feeling when they lost at home to the Lions and the Vikings early this season, you had a feeling that, okay, well, last year they did the same thing. They lost at home to the Lions and the Vikings, but then they went back to Detroit on Thanksgiving, and they stopped the Lions. They played very well, and that was a huge momentum boost for them going into December, whereas they didn't get that momentum boost this year. They still, to this point, have not beaten a good team this season, a team with a better record than them this season, when last year they beat the Lions, they beat the Chiefs at home. Even before that, they beat Justin Herbert. I understand that the Chargers were not a playoff team last year, but that was an important win. They had some important wins stocked up in their pile that they don't have going into this playoffs. So not being able to build on that momentum that's what's changed since week one. Week one, memories were last season. It was the Cowboys blowout, going toe-to-toe with San Francisco, and then all of a sudden you're going to Brazil, you're going against a really good Eagles team that kind of needed to be let up back off the mat a little bit after how last season ended, and they weren't able to do that, and they haven't been able to build on that since.
Yeah. So when you get the Eagles here now, especially with personnel, and I'm curious about this from the Packers' perspective, do you feel like Nick Sirianni and that staff, do you still feel like they're feeling a lot of that pressure to make something happen in the playoffs because of what transpired last year? Do you feel like there is a little bit of comfort there?
Yeah, I don't know if a head coach should ever feel comfortable, especially going, at this point. Like, I think if he was feeling complacent at this point, he probably shouldn't be in the job that he's in, and I don't think he does necessarily feel that way. There's still, I think a wild card exit would be extremely disappointing for this team. Does that mean that Sirianni would be out with a loss? I don't know. I think he's gotten so much, and he has been able to turn so much around from what this team was last year, and as much vitriol as he gets when things aren't going well, I think he deserves a lot of credit when things are going very well, and they are currently going very well. That all being said, the Packers, I think, are a good team. They're not a team that should be underestimated. They are a tough draw for a 7th seed. But I think, the expectation, the Eagles hold themselves to a high standard. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect from how we'll see how this game goes. But I mean, to me, it would be a surprise if something were to happen to him if the Eagles didn't win this weekend.
Well, I guess that's why I was curious about, especially from the Packers' perspective.
I think the bluster around Nick Sirianni in a potential hot seat last year was so premature to me.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Much the same way that the flack that Matt LaFleur has gotten about potential hot seat now is just way too premature to me. That's not to say, look, Matt LaFleur screwed some things up against the Chicago Bears. They did not need to lose that game. Matt LaFleur beat himself, and that is why the Bears finally beat Matt LaFleur. You can say, just like with a player, okay, things need, Jordan Love's accuracy needs to be better. He needs to do a better job balancing that line between taking care of the football and taking shots and making big plays. Things can be better. No one's going to say Jordan Love's not the quarterback, right? Things can be better with Matt LaFleur. Things could be better last year with Nick Sirianni. When you got a coach, Nick Sirianni, that has proven he can get you to the Super Bowl because he literally got you to the Super Bowl, you should be very patient before deciding to make a change there. When you got a coach in Matt LaFleur that has developed the next franchise quarterback after Aaron Rodgers, something that 3 years ago was a dread of everyone in this fan base. Like, oh my goodness, Aaron Rodgers is getting old. The end is near. What's going to happen? Oh, you got the guy already because Matt LaFleur developed him. You should be very patient before you put that guy on the hot seat. So these are two of the better head coaches in the NFL. There are a lot of bad head coaches in the NFL. There's a reason Black Monday exists. There's a carousel every year because there's not enough good coaches in this league. These two teams have a good head coach. Some wherewithal, some recognition of that is okay, even if, the Eagles could have finished better in 2023. And, Matt LaFleur did screw some things up against Chicago. They're still good head coaches.
I want to stick with the point of Jordan Love because I want to get your take on something. First off, excuse me. I tried to do some math.
Oh, boy.
There's a reason we write for a living, man.
Exactly. Fun fact, I told my college math professor, I said, if you pass me, you'll never see me again. He gave me a C. We're going on 13 years. We haven't seen each other. Hope you're doing well if you're watching this. But I was looking at some numbers for Jordan Love, looking at the first 7 games. And then the last 8 games that he's played, this was before the bye week. Now, through those first 7 games, obviously he missed 2 games, and then he missed the second half against Jacksonville. But in that first half, he was completing around 61% of his passes for more than 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, averaged around 260 a game. Through the back half, he's completed 65% of his passes now, even though he hasn't thrown the ball as much, with about 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception, averaging about 196. My question is, obviously you would want the best of both worlds, but in terms of what Jordan Love you would say you would like to see in this game, would you like to see more of that first half where he was aggressive, though might turn the ball over, or right now he's a little more, you say, conservative, not as many deep shots, but kind of just letting the game kind of play with the checkdowns and things of that nature?
This might be a cop-out, but I would say neither. What you need to see is a ruthlessly efficient and accurate quarterback, and we have not seen that. You mentioned the 65%. 4 of his last 5 games in the regular season, Jordan Love completed fewer than 64% of his passes. The one anomaly was when he was up over 70% in Seattle, which is the best game that he's played down the stretch. That's not good enough. You look at last year, their final game against the Bears, and it was kind of a mediocre 17-9 win against Chicago last year that didn't even matter how it looked. They just needed to win that game to get in the playoffs, and they did. Jordan Love completed over 80% of his passes. He was 27-32, and 2 of those incompletions were 2 of the best throws Jordan Love has ever made. The cross-body, cross-field throw to Romeo Doubs in the end zone, then the opposite end zone later in the game, a pinpoint throw to Bo Melton. Both of those throws dropped, but they were tight coverage. It was a tough catch, but he just put it in a spot that nobody else could put it, and that's what you were seeing from Jordan Love going into Dallas. You're not seeing that now. More than anything, the guy just needs to be accurate. You look at how the Vikings played him 2 weeks ago in Minnesota without Christian Watson. They put an umbrella coverage on and just dared Jordan Love, okay, make this 8-yard throw every single time. And he couldn't do that. He couldn't throw the Vikings out of that defense against a really smart secondary like the Eagles. You better be sure that they're Olivia. They play a lot of zone coverage, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to be playing a lot of man coverage against these Packers receivers. There's going to be opportunities underneath to dare Jordan Love to make the throw. He's got to make the throw, and obviously he's got the elbow now. So he wasn't accurate before the elbow. Now he's got to be accurate dealing with the elbow. It's a tall order for him. But I think more than anything, just be accurate. Hit the throws that are there.
Yeah. As far as with Jalen Hurts, if he does play on Sunday, it will have been a while since he's played football. Do you think rust is a thing? Does Nick Sirianni have any questions about it? Does he think that might come into factor?
They've been asked this multiple times between Monday, yesterday, Wednesday, as Hurts finally got back to practice on Wednesday in a limited capacity, and everyone emphatically has been like, no, it's not a factor. He has played enough football in this league at a high level that there isn't a concern that a layoff would have added any sort of rust to him. I guess, time will tell, and we'll see how he is able to fare, considering if he is able to go on Sunday. But it's certainly, it's a question that must be asked too. It has been quite some time since he's been out there. Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee have played in his absence in the meantime. But Hurts has kind of, interestingly enough, I think the Eagles and the Packers have taken a similar trajectory in the season in terms of the emphasis of the run game over the pass game over the course of the season. Since the bye week, the Eagles have shifted to more of a run-first approach, making sure Saquon Barkley is involved in this offense as humanly possible, and it has done a lot for them. They've had a lot of success because of his success as the league's rushing title holder this season. So, it's interesting to see how that has happened. And then also, kind of similarly, earlier in the season, you saw Hurts making some poor decisions with the football, throwing interceptions, fumbling the ball more frequently. And then as the season progressed, he did a much better job in tightening up, arguably a little bit more conservative in the passing game. But ultimately, it has been enough to win. There have been some flashes where he has done more than that when need be. And I think back to the Steelers game about a month ago when I think the passing game really popped off and Hurts played really well. Barkley, not a whole lot going on for him on the ground. So Hurts has been able to show that when he is called upon to drop back and throw the ball to his favorite receivers and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith specifically, he's been able to make it happen. We'll see if the layoff affects him at all.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that matchup. And that was something I was thinking about with Barkley, because you have a guy like that where you can try to get the ball to him, manage the clock, take some of that pressure off Hurts, because it would be his first game back, so it might take a little bit of some of that steam. So I guess that's what I'm curious about. I feel like both teams have such a similar style of they want to manage the clock, you want to run the ball, and just play good defense, and for the Packers' sake, try to take the ball away. I just think it comes down to who can do it the best in this game. I guess do you have a similar feel, or you might think there might be a different key on the Green Bay side?
The difference here is, look, this is going to be a little taboo in these parts because Josh Jacobs has been exceptional for this Packers offense. He's the best playmaker they have on that side of the ball, without question. He is having a top 5 season in the history of the Packers for a running back. Up over 1,300 yards, first time since Ahman Green in 2003. He's got 15 touchdowns. That's tied third most in a single season in Packers history. He's got the longest active streak of rushing touchdown per game, 8 straight games with a rushing touchdown. No other running back in Packers history has done that. It is a top 5 rushing season in the history of this team. That means something when you got a team, a franchise with Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor and Ahman Green and Aaron Jones more recently. Yeah. There's been a lot of good running backs here, so it's saying something. Saquon Barkley is having a top 5 rushing season in the history of the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Not just the Eagles. The history of the league. He's over 2,000 yards. That's not the same. Saquon Barkley's been the best running back in the NFL this season. There's not a lot of running backs that this Packers defense could face where you say that guy's even better than our guy.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs probably the 3rd best running back in the league behind Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. He's going to be a second-team All-Pro. Saquon Barkley's a first-team All-Pro. I think the key for this Packers defense is do not let Jalen Hurts also hurt you, because it's almost unfathomable to think there'd be no rust. He's going to have thrown 4 passes in 4 weeks going into this game, and then boom, you just get dropped in the middle of a playoff game with the season on the line. As much as he has played, he's played in the Super Bowl. That's a lot of time off. Like against a good defense, what the Packers have, that's a tall task too. You can't let him get comfortable and hurt you, because Saquon Barkley is going to get his. Jalen Hurts gets rolled. Now they're balanced. You want to keep them one-dimensional and take advantage of whatever rust there might be with the quarterback.
On the Eagles' perspective, how do you think they're approaching in terms of their keys to beat Green Bay? I know Sirianni talked about the potential of the explosive offense that Green Bay has. I guess from the Eagles' perspective, how are they kind of attacking this game?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's interesting too. I'm really curious to see how the Eagles approach this game from a coverage standpoint, given the fact they have played so much zone this year and have had a lot of success. But knowing the struggles that Jordan Love has had throwing against man coverage, would that prompt a change for Vic Fangio? Would he break his tendencies this season? I think that's a big question. I don't know. This Eagles defense has been really, really good at preventing those explosive plays. And I'm curious to know, and we haven't gotten into him too much, but Christian Watson, the fact that he isn't going to play on Sunday, how much does that limit their explosive play ability? Again, I mentioned Cooper DeJean earlier. I feel like Jaden Reed did a really good job of generating some explosive plays in that Week 1 game when Avonte Maddox was primarily responsible for him in the slot. And now that Maddox is no longer in that starting role, DeJean has been much more sound. I think that could be a challenge for the Packers to generate some plays in the slot there too. So I do feel like the Eagles have a number of advantages in this matchup, given how strong their secondary has been in terms of limiting those explosive plays and not giving up extra yards, especially after contact. This has been a much more fundamentally sound team than the team that rolled out there in Sao Paulo in Week 1.
Christian Watson is the man coverage beater in this Packers offense. Yeah. He's 6'4", runs a 4.3. I was asking Bo Melton, how do you replace that? And he's like, well, I run 4.3. I'm just not 6'4". You can't replace 6'4", runs 4.3. And so without Christian Watson, you've got a lot of receivers that are better equipped to beat a zone. Dontavian Wicks, very good against the zone. Romeo Dobbs, very good against the zone. So I would be surprised if Vic Fangio didn't at least somewhat break his tendency, because this Packers skill set isn't exactly – they don't have their man coverage beater, so how do you beat man coverage without him, right? But I think you got to establish the run game, and then Matt LaFleur loves his play action. You're going to have to scheme verticality in the passing game by using the play action, and you can't do that if Josh Jacobs doesn't get rolling against a very formidable interior defensive line that the Eagles have. So that's where the game starts. Not a surprise, because that's how the Packers offense is generated for a few months now, right? You go back to the Seattle game. The 11-play opening touchdown drive, Josh Jacobs touches the football 9 times, 7 carries. It was just, we're not even trying to surprise you. Josh Jacobs is our guy. We're going to go to him. You're going to have to do that and have success doing that with Josh Jacobs early so that you can get to your play action.
What have you seen from the Eagles' defensive line and just that run defense? Obviously, you talked about Cooper DeJean in the secondary. You talked about Jalen Carter and just the dominance that he can bring. Just what have you seen from the Eagles' run defense and just how they've done up to this point?
Yeah, they're not really they don't like to use super heavy personnel packages to try to stop the run. They've been very much let's try to stop the run out of our nickel personnel, which is why I feel like why DeJean has been so they have been so successful at it is because DeJean has been a pretty sound run stopper. Up front, they have Jordan Davis is their nose tackle, who is a big man, and his job is just to clog up the middle of that defensive front. He's big enough to be able to take on a couple of gaps, and then Jalen Carter has been also really he is known to be disruptive in the passing game as a pass rusher, but he has also been very good in disrupting up front and getting into the backfield and trying to make the tackles for a loss. So, and their edges have been doing well against the run too. So it's been and again the inside linebackers Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean too. If when the running backs are able to get to the second level, they are great tacklers and they're really explosive too. They're able to shoot gaps and do all that. So it has been a big improvement of this Eagles defense is their talent in stopping the run. I'll be curious to see how they go about trying to attack Josh Jacobs this weekend.
The first name and the name that she keeps saying a lot, Cooper DeJean, that's got to be giving Packers fans cold sweats.
I'm sorry.
You owe everyone an apology.
That was a popular name in the Packers community for the draft, and I mean, he was there in the first round for everyone, so ends up going early in the second round to the Eagles. And
he's been really, really good.
Yeah, he's been a big difference maker for them. Like I said, he's really come in there, and people were like, when he was drafted, is this guy a quarterback to begin with? Is he a safety? And he has been able to step into this slot role, a role that he was not super familiar with when he played at Iowa. He mostly served as their, an outside cornerback, but he's made this transition and he's taken it on and been very he's come a long way, especially when it comes to his press man coverage. I feel like he has gotten a lot more physical. There have been some lapses at times during the season, especially that Carolina Panthers game of all games against Adam Thielen. He was probably the receiver that gave him the most trouble. Otherwise, I mean, you've seen him come up really big in certain moments, especially making key fourth down stops. The Cincinnati Bengals game comes to mind where he made a great play on a screen pass to Jamar Chase. He totally sniffed it out and made a tackle. Derrick Henry, a big stop on him too. And you just think about the size disparity between those two players. He has been there's been a lot of bright spots on this Eagles defense, but he has been a huge one.
When you look at the Packers defense, I guess I'm curious about what area you're more interested to see. How does the pass rush handle? Because again, it's been there, it hasn't been there, it's been so hit or miss. But then when I think about the Packers secondary, obviously, there's no Jair Alexander. They've been, some of the reserves in there. But for the most part in this time, they been solid. It's not like Justin Jefferson just killed them in the Vikings game or, Jordan Addison. For the most part, they've kind of held their ground. What area are you more interested to see, especially when you have a loaded Eagles offense that not only has the running back, they have Smith, they have Brown? Is there anything area you're curious to see what shows up or not?
I have a lot more confidence in the Packers defense going into this matchup than the Packers offense, which is, over the past 10 years, very rare for me to say going into the playoffs. Usually it is the offense that is carrying the water, and it's the defense like, oh goodness, if you can just, make a few tackles, maybe you could win this week. I think that this is not the worst matchup for this Packers pass rush that has been very inconsistent, because it's different than a Jared Goff who, if you don't get to him in time, he quickly gets rid of the ball. Like that quick release. The Packers rushed Jalen Hurts to contain him in the pocket in week 1, and they had quite a bit of success doing that. And that's, again, going to be the key this week, because the one thing that will not be rusty is Jalen Hurts' legs. I mean, he will kill you. And the Packers saw that in 2022. 100 yards in the first quarter in Philadelphia. He will kill you with his legs if you let him. This Packers pass rush has done a pretty good job throughout the season, not just Jalen Hurts week 1, of rushing to contain mobile quarterbacks in the pocket. And that is the priority against Jalen Hurts this week, is don't let him beat you with the legs. Make him throw. Let's see how rusty he is. And if you're the Packers defense, you just hope that you can tidy up the coverage well enough to, not let Jalen Hurts have the success with the arm that would make this a very balanced Eagles offense and borderline impossible to defend. So I don't think it's the worst matchup there. The question just is, can they repeat what the recipe that they used week one and since then?
I'm curious as we near just the end. I'm obviously not as familiar with the Eagles on special teams.
Sure.
I guess, what is the makeup of that group? And we'll get into the Packers in a second.
Yeah, it's been a decent group. They've had good games. They've had bad games. It's been a little erratic this year for Michael Clay's group. The most inconsistent aspect of this Eagles special team unit has been their kicker. Jake Elliott has missed 8 field goals this year. He missed his first field goal just this past week against the Giants between 30 and 40 yards. So that's like his shortest miss of the season. Most of his misses have been beyond 50. So they just handed out a big extension to him in the offseason. He had a great year last year, and this year he has just, for whatever reason, whether it's him, whether it is the operation, whether it's the weather. I mean, he's certainly kicked in some wind this year, although in your last year that was he kicked in some bad weather last year and still managed to find success. So it's just been a little inconsistent for him. So you do wonder, going into the playoffs, how is he going to fare? Nick Sirianni has been asked time and time again, like, how do you feel about Jake Elliott going into this time of year? And they continue to stand by him. They have not made any consideration to at least go outside and try to find someone. Obviously, at this point, too late for that. But they have continued to support him and back him. And, we'll see if he is able to clean up and get back on the right track. But, yeah, I think there has to be a little bit of concern about Elliott and whether or not he can be depended on if called on.
It's very ironic because you're talking about the kicking problems and all of that. Green Bay somehow struck gold. I guess if there is any edge the Packers have in terms of matching up each position, it might just be kicker. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if there's anything else. It might just be that one position. But outside of kicker, everything else for the special teams, it hasn't been pretty. What areas are you looking to see that it's like, okay, you got to clean this up, from punts to return game to everything? Just what are all those areas that you're curious about? Because as we learned from Chicago, you can get an edge in special teams and you can use that as some momentum.
Yeah, well, at the risk of stating the obvious, I think it's very important that the Packers punt coverage knows which direction the punt is going to be punt before it leaves punter Daniel Whelan's foot. It's usually nice to know, okay, it's going to be in this corner, not the exact opposite corner. No matter what the blockers do, go toward the football. And if they do that, they'll be doing better than they did against the Bears. I am hearing the same, that they have an edge at kicker, which is wild, because a year ago, that was the absolute biggest concern. The guillotine hanging over this team's head was the kicking situation. Yeah. Anders Carlson, it obviously eventually ended up costing them the season late in the fourth quarter at San Francisco. They don't have that concern now with Brandon McManus. In fact, if there is a 55-yard field goal to go win the game for the Packers this week, I would suggest that Matt LaFleur just lets Brandon McManus go kick it.
Does not call
and
it
not call it. Just know the distance, know the range, and this kicker has considerable range. I mean, that 55-yard field goal Brandon McManus did split the uprights with. That is a heck of a way for him to go into a postseason, because Philadelphia, very similar to Green Bay, not a place you want to be hitting from more than 50 yards outdoors in January. Brandon McManus made it look easy, and that's a good thing to have. So They have the luxury of knowing that they've got a reliable clutch guy that can make hellacious kicks, even this time of year, even outdoors. Just let him go do it.
Now, as we wrap it up, I always like to open up the floor. Are there any final words, final thoughts, or anything at all that you want to get out there?
No, honestly, I'm very excited for this game, and mostly because I feel like it is a very full circle moment for me. I'm excited to see you guys out in Philly.
Yes.
We'll have a great Saturday night, and then Sunday at the game. No, it's special to have like two parts of my life come together in one game. I'm a little sentimental about it, but I'm very eager to see what happens. This was a Packers team that I picked to win the the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season, which is perhaps was a little bold.
Wow.
It was a little bold.
Hey, I picked the Bears as a wild card team this year, so, we all have our flaws.
But I was very high on Jordan Love coming out of last season, as I'm sure a lot of people were. And unfortunately for Packers fans, he has been more inconsistent this year. It just hasn't been the same as last year. But I do wonder if there's a chance that the Jordan Love that everyone saw in that Dallas game comes to play on Sunday, and he could be the X factor in this game for the Packers. So, but that said, this is a great Eagles team that's had a lot of success this season, really confident going into this game. I think this is a really fun matchup.
Jordan Love has the talent to have a legitimate case to lay claim as the most talented quarterback in the NFC. That's how I felt coming into this season. And then it just hasn't happened at all. He's been the third best quarterback in the NFC North by no short measure, because 2 Pro Bowlers, and Jared Goff and Sam Darnold, are in the NFC North. He's been number 3. This would be a great time for him to turn that around. It's not just him. He's hit the sophomore slump this season. You know who else has had a subpar year too? C.J. Stroud. Yeah. This is what growth is not linear. Sometimes guys have to kind of figure it out by struggling and by failing before they can take that next step. This would be the right time for him to take that next step. So I think that's going to be big this week. I just don't know how many times a team, maybe a quarterback, a head coach needs to tell you who they are right now in the moment before you believe them. And what this team has told Packers fans all season is that they can compete with anybody. I don't think the Eagles are going to run them off the field by any means. I think it's going to be a very close, competitive 4-quarter game. They've also said that they can't beat these teams in close, competitive 4-quarter games. So at some point, you just kind of got to believe who they are, and that's where I'm at. I'm going to believe who the Packers are telling me they are. Now, the Packers have everything in their power to go out and prove themselves wrong and say, no, that's not who we are. We are a team that can beat these teams, and we're going to show you. And they do that. All credit to them this week. They absolutely can. The question is, will they? So, we got to wait and see what happens. But, Olivia, before we go, I'm very grateful to have a Philadelphia tour guide for this season.
You're already stealing my thunder. Go ahead.
It's going to be good for Dominique and I to know the spots, but for those that may not have Olivia Reiner on speed dial,
oh boy,
where should Packers fans hit up in Philly?
Oh man,
where's the best cheesecake?
Everyone wants to know where the best cheesesteak
right.
is.
Yes,
I am like the last person you should ask about where to get a cheesesteak, simply because I don't eat red meat.
Oh, okay.
So, but I also know what people say, so I know where other people are going that are not tourists. So
word on the street.
They're definitely not going to Pat's and Gino's. They are going, Angelo's is like the talk of the town, all the rage. It's a little bit hard to get food there. They have great cheesesteaks, I'm told, and pizza as well. Uncle Gus's, I believe, is owned by the same people from Angelo's. They just opened in Reading Terminal Market. I've heard good things about them, too. They're another cheesesteak joint in Reading Terminal Market. And also have heard good things. What else? About... we'll go with those two.
Yeah. You writing this down, Dominic? You writing this down?
Got it down here.
There you go.
Del Rossi's was the other place I'm thinking of. That's in Northern Liberties, too. They have cheesesteaks and pizza. I've heard great things about those.
Liberty Bell. Go see it, or not all it's cracked up to be? What? We're getting all the secrets out now. Oh, my goodness, Olivia.
I need to have like a tourist day in my own city. There's certain things I haven't seen, I haven't done, and one of them is see the Liberty Bell. I live pretty close to Liberty Bell, too.
You live close? Oh, Independence Hall. You ever been there?
I've walked around there.
Okay.
Like I said, I need to go have a day.
You do
the Constitution Center. Go do the Liberty Bell. Not that there is much to do at the Liberty Bell. It is the bell.
Yeah.
You just go look at it.
Have you ran the Rocky Steps?
I've been on the Rocky Steps. I don't think I've ever.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the Rocky Steps, like the statue. I had that on the list.
Okay.
Yep. Some cheese steaks.
All right, you'll hit them all. You'll do all the things.
So we'll make sure. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I've never been to Philly, so I'm looking forward. I hear about the great atmosphere
it's a lot
at
of fun.
the games. It's going to be rowdy, and I was also happy to hear it's not as cold in Philadelphia.
It'll be a little warmer. It's
little bit
it's
warmer.
cold there, but there's no place like Green Bay when it
It'll
comes
feel
to
warm.
being cold.
It'll feel warm. You know, the way the Green Bay's been lately, 30 degrees will feel warm.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Summer
So,
day.
yeah, it's going to be fun. Looking forward to it. Olivia, once again, thank you so
Thank you,
much
guys.
for hopping back on the podcast. You built the foundation. You all did, and I'm just trying not to tear the house down.
You're doing a great job. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, and Ryan, great job as always. And yeah, we'll be hanging out as normal.
It's the nicest thing he's ever said about me.
I know it's. I don't know. People would probably laugh seeing us behind the scenes, like on these trips, like when we're just riding around, whether it's Seattle or LA or whatnot. It's definitely
we have a
freaking
time,
frack.
man. We have a time.
We do, so we'll make it happen in Philly. So once again, thank you all so much for checking out the Green 19 podcast. For Olivia Reiner, Ryan Wood, I'm Dominique Yates.